Imagine spending your entire life meticulously building an emergency fund, buying the right insurance policies, and fortifying your home against every conceivable disaster, only to realize in your golden years that you completely forgot to build a backup system for your own brain.
Yeah, it's a massive blind spot for most of us.
It really is. So today, we are undertaking a critical mission for this deep dive. We are completely redefining how you view aging and cognitive decline. Specifically, we're taking a really hard look at the quiet thief of memory, Alzheimer's, and we are shifting the narrative entirely away from fear.
Right, because fear just paralyzes us.
Exactly. We are not here to dread getting older. Instead, we're looking at a proactive, highly effective blueprint for constructing what we're going to call your brain gym. It's all about ensuring your mind remains a lush, well-tended garden, rather than an overgrown, unnavigable forest.
It is a phenomenal shift in perspective. I mean, society spends an inordinate amount of energy worrying about the inevitable passage of time.
Which we can't control anyway.
Right, exactly. But when we look at the actual mechanics of cognitive health, we find a really clear, actionable framework for what you can actively build and maintain right now.
So it's less about just waiting for things to break down.
Precisely. It is the transition from being a passive victim of the calendar to becoming the head architect of your own cognitive longevity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can start hauling equipment into this brain gym, we have to dismantle a fundamental misunderstanding that pretty much all of us harbor about our brains when we are young.
And it's a myth that tricks us into neglecting our mental fitness in the first place.
Yeah. In our 20s and 30s, we mistakenly treat the brain like it's a permanent fixture. We view it as this major, heavily paved concrete highway.
Right. We assume the infrastructure is just set.
Exactly. We assume that no matter how bad the traffic gets, the daily stress, the sleepless nights, the sheer volume of chaotic information we process, we just think that solid concrete road will always just be there, completely unchanging.
Well, it is a very comforting illusion, treating the brain like static infrastructure. But biologically speaking, it is entirely false.
Well, not a road at all, is it?
No, not even close. The brain is not a concrete road. It is a highly dynamic, incredibly energy-hungry muscle. And the basic physiological rule of any muscle is that if you do not intentionally subject it to resistance and training, it atrophies.
Right, use it or lose it.
Exactly. Because we treat the brain like a permanent highway, people reach their 60s or 70s and suddenly realize, oh, wow, there are massive potholes here.
And we've all experienced the early versions of those potholes, right? It's that surreal moment where you walk confidently into the kitchen, you stop dead in your tracks, and have absolutely zero idea why you're there.
Oh, or you find yourself wandering around the living room in a mild panic, desperately searching for the smartphone that is literally resting in your own hand.
Yes. I did that last week, and, we laugh those off as brain farts, but they hint at something deeper. And there is a profound, albeit somewhat tragic irony here. Well, humans are builders. We painstakingly forge our professional reputations. We build massive stock portfolios. We curate our homes. But we completely forget to build a spare brain for our old age.
We build zero cognitive reserve.
Right. So explain cognitive reserve, because the sources brought this up as a key factor.
Sure. Cognitive reserve is arguably the most crucial concept in neurology today. Think of cognitive reserve as a complex network of back roads and detours in your brain.
Okay, so if the main highway gets blocked.
Exactly. When neuropathology, like the amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's, when that starts to build up and block a main highway, a brain with high cognitive reserve simply reroutes the traffic down a well-developed side street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the person functions perfectly normally. I mean, autopsies have frequently revealed the brains of highly stimulated, endlessly curious individuals that were riddled with the physical pathology of Alzheimer's.
Wait, really? Riddled with it?
Yes. Yet these people showed absolutely zero clinical symptoms during their lives. They had built such a massive spare brain that the disease just couldn't take them down.
That is wild. They literally built a bypass around the disease, which honestly totally reframes how we should view Alzheimer's itself.
How do you mean?
Well, it's not a bandit. It doesn't kick down the front door, tie you up, and steal all your gold at once. It is a remarkably quiet thief.
That is the perfect way to describe it. A violent break-in triggers all the alarms. But a quiet thief takes your memory piece by piece so gradually that you rationalize the early losses.
Right, you just blame it on being tired.
Yeah. It starts with the car keys. Then it escalates to misplacing a familiar word in a sentence. Eventually, it moves to a grandchild's name. And the ultimate tragedy is that it eventually steals the person's very identity.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is. You have brilliant negotiators, high-ranking executives, people who used to command boardrooms, ultimately looking at their own spouses and asking, "Who are you?"
It feels exactly like a malicious computer glitch.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, imagine a bug in your operating system that silently deletes background files one by one. You don't notice because your desktop wallpaper is still there, your mouse still moves, so you assume everything is totally fine.
Right, the surface level looks normal.
Exactly. But deep in the hard drive, vital lines of code are just vanishing. Until one morning, you click to open a basic Word document and the entire operating system spectacularly crashes.
The architecture is hollowing out from the inside while the facade remains intact. Which brings us to a vital question.
How do we stop the glitch?
Exactly. If the brain is a dynamic muscle that requires constant training, how are we accidentally opening the front door and inviting this computer glitch, this quiet thief, inside?
And the sources point to a really specific trap here.
Yes. The answer lies in a highly dangerous societal trap retirement.
The salary retirement trap. It's crazy how many people make this catastrophic error by letting their brains retire on the exact same day their salaries do.
We have culturally equated the end of formal employment with the end of cognitive exertion. We tell ourselves, well, we have finally earned rest.
Right, time to kick back.
But from a neurological standpoint, complete rest is a death sentence for brain tissue.
I mean, think about the stereotypical retirement dream routine. You wake up leisurely, you turn on the television to catch a morning drama.
A very passive activity.
Right. Then around noon, you switch over to the political news broadcast. In the afternoon, you take a long nap, you wake up, eat dinner, and end your evening complaining about the state of the government.
It sounds relaxing on paper.
It does. But biologically, settling into this exact routine day after day is effectively checking your brain into a nursing home long before your body ever gets there.
Because that entire routine is built on passive consumption. You are receiving information, but you are not actively processing, analyzing, or creating anything with it. You are literally just letting a screen wash over you.
Contrast that with the people who stay sharp.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at seniors whose minds remain as sharp as a Japanese chef's knife well into their 90s, the distinguishing factor isn't some rare genetic lottery.
It's not just good genes.
No, it is relentless curiosity.
Curiosity is the ultimate anti-aging serum. The sharpest seniors are voracious readers. They're constantly interrogating the world with questions, and they throw themselves into learning new technology.
Yes. You see 80-year-olds who can navigate complex smartphone apps and troubleshoot Wi-Fi routers better than their teenage grandchildren.
And then you compare that to a 65-year-old who celebrates the end of their working life like a kid thrilled that school is out for the summer,
Yeah.
proudly declaring they are done learning.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physiological reality of what curiosity achieves. The brain is incredibly energy intensive. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, but consumes 20% of your daily energy budget.
Wow, 20%, that's a huge drain.
It is a ruthless accountant. When you declare that you are done learning, you stop demanding new neural pathways. The brain realizes those pathways aren't being used, so it initiates a biological pruning process.
Wait, pruning? Like a bush?
Literally. Microglial cells actually come in and dismantle the unused synapses to save energy.
That makes a quote from the sources hit so much harder. The idea was that a brain that stops learning is a brain that is practicing to die.
It is a very stark way to put it, but accurate.
Yeah, when I first read that, I thought it was just poetic flair. But you're saying it's literal. The brain is actively reallocating resources away from cognition.
It is a brutal, efficient dismantling. If you aren't actively building the cognitive reserve, you are actively losing it. Continuous challenging learning, struggling to grasp a new concept, wrestling with a new language, figuring out new software. That friction is the primary weightlifting equipment in the brain gym.
Okay, so we have the mental weightlifting lockdown. Curiosity keeps the neurons firing and prevents that pruning process. But the brain doesn't exist in a vacuum, floating in a jar. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the physical maintenance required to keep the brain gym open is incredibly straightforward, yet almost universally ignored.
Which brings us to the physical infrastructure daily cardiovascular movement, specifically walking.
Now, I have to push back on this for a second.
Go ahead.
When you hear that the ultimate defense against a devastating neurological thief like Alzheimer's is a 30-minute daily walk. I mean, it sounds almost insultingly simple.
It does sound basic, I agree.
It sounds like generic physical education advice from middle school. Is a brisk stroll really enough to hold off a total collapse of the operating system?
It sounds basic, but the underlying mechanism is profoundly powerful. We just established that the brain consumes 20% of your body's oxygen and energy.
Right.
To deliver that massive payload, your brain relies on an incredibly intricate, dense network of blood vessels. When you engage in simple, rhythmic physical movement, like a brisk 30-minute walk, you are drastically improving cardiovascular efficiency.
So you're pumping the good stuff up there.
You are literally forcing oxygen-rich blood up into the brain, nourishing the tissue. Furthermore, cardiovascular exercise stimulates the glymphatic system, which is the brain's waste clearance pathway.
So it's essentially taking the trash out.
Precisely. Throughout the day, your brain builds up metabolic waste, including those toxic amyloid beta proteins we mentioned earlier.
The ones that block the roads.
Yes. A healthy cardiovascular system acts like a street sweeper, flushing those toxins out before they can clump together and form plaques.
That makes so much sense.
So no, walking isn't just about keeping your waistline trim, it is actively keeping your cognitive supply lines open and clean.
Which makes our actual habits kind of hilarious in a dark way.
Yeah.
We all know we need to move, but the reality for so many people is that they only walk to two specific locations: the refrigerator and the coffee table to grab the TV remote.
It's the modern condition.
Yeah, people have been postponing their grand exercise plans since, like, the late 1990s. The eternal promise of, oh, I'll start walking tomorrow.
And that journey to the refrigerator introduces the next vital component of the brain gym, the building materials. Nutrition.
Right, because you can't build a gym out of garbage.
Exactly. A high-functioning brain thrives on a specific biological building code. Leafy vegetables, dark berries, omega-3 rich fish, and high-quality fats like olive oil. These are the raw materials the brain utilizes to repair cellular damage and maintain neuroplasticity.
But instead of delivering premium building materials, we hand our brains what I like to call the crispy pork paradox.
I love that term from the sources.
It's so true, right? People are utterly terrified of losing their memories to Alzheimer's, but then they sit down and eat a diet composed entirely of deep-fried foods, heavy processed sweets, and pork belly that is so incredibly crispy, it practically calcifies the cardiologist's heart just looking at it.
The crispy pork paradox perfectly encapsulates the disconnect between our fears and our daily micro-decisions. We fear the cognitive decline, yet we actively rush its arrival through our diet.
It's like pouring sugar in the gas tank.
It really is. A diet high in refined sugars and ultra-processed fried foods creates rampant systemic inflammation. And this isn't just a stomach issue. Advanced glycation end products, literally called AGs, form when proteins or fats combine with sugar in the bloodstream, often from fried foods.
And those get into the brain.
Yes, these AGs cross the blood-brain barrier and trigger the brain's immune cells to go into overdrive, inadvertently attacking healthy neural tissue.
Wow, so you're turning your immune system against your own brain.
Basically, yes. You simply cannot construct a resilient, sharp brain out of highly inflammatory, low-quality materials.
Okay, so we are moving our bodies to sweep the streets. We are swapping the crispy, inflammatory pork for salmon to provide good building materials, and we are staying ruthlessly curious. We are fully stocking the brain gym.
We are indeed.
But what about the environment outside our own heads? Because the most crucial piece of brain gym equipment isn't a food or a treadmill, it's other people.
Human isolation is a potent neurotoxin,
That's a strong word for it.
but accurate. When seniors isolate themselves in their homes, detached from community, debate, and conversation, they allow their minds to enter a state of severe understimulation. It creates the phenomenon of the dusty brain.
The dusty brain.
Yes. Just like a guest room in a house that hasn't been opened in years, the cognitive pathways gather dust from sheer disuse.
We often think of socializing as just a pleasant way to pass the time, but social friction is actual mental cardio.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, engaging with friends is biologically vital. And it doesn't just mean politely sipping tea in silence. Playing a highly strategic game of chess, tracking cards in a complex game, or having a heated, spicy debate about local zoning laws or macroeconomics, that is a workout.
Absolutely.
And to be clear here, imparting what the sources said, it does not matter what side of the political aisle you sit on, left, right, center. The biological benefit comes purely from the friction.
Exactly. The conversation itself is the gym.
You are forced to recall facts, construct a logical argument, anticipate a counterpoint, and articulate your thoughts on the fly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, casual social interaction is one of the most computationally complex tasks a human brain performs.
Really, just chatting.
Think about what is happening under the hood during a lively debate at a coffee shop. You are simultaneously reading micro expressions on your friend's face, interpreting subtle shifts in the tone of their voice, dipping into your episodic memory to retrieve a relevant anecdote, and formulating a coherent verbal response, all in real time.
Okay, yeah, when you lay it out like that, it's intense.
A supercomputer would struggle to replicate that. It is a full-brain, high-intensity interval training session. However, we must draw a stark line between engaging social friction and chronic hostility.
The difference between laughter and acid.
Precisely.
Yes, this is a massive distinction in the sources. A spicy debate with a friend that ends in a handshake is fantastic cardio. But living in a constant, unyielding state of genuine rage is highly destructive.
It tears down the gym instead of building it up.
Exactly. The research consistently shows that humor, laughter, and lightheartedness actively lower stress hormones and boost overall brain function. But if you spend your retirement furious at the world, whether you are seething over the daily fluctuations in gas prices or screaming until your veins pop at the television over a football match, that chronic anger acts like a slow-burning acid on your brain.
Chronic anger and perpetual stress bathe the brain in a hormone called cortisol.
And cortisol is bad news long-term.
Right. In short bursts, cortisol is a helpful survival mechanism, but sustained high levels of cortisol are highly neurotoxic. Over time, a cortisol-soaked brain literally experiences physical shrinkage in the hippocampus, which is the brain's primary center for learning and memory formation.
So the acid of anger actually eats away the very hardware you need to remember your life.
That is the tragic reality. Therefore, actively practicing emotional regulation, seeking out joy, and maintaining deep social connections aren't just, nice self-care concepts. They act as a physiological, biological shield.
So when we combine all of this together, the relentless mental curiosity, the daily cardiovascular flesh of a 30-minute walk, the anti-inflammatory diet, the robust laughter, and the challenging debates with friends, we fundamentally change our relationship with time.
We do.
We stop uselessly fighting the clock.
We transition from a state of anxious denial into a state of active, empowered maintenance.
There is a beautiful philosophical metaphor in the sources that captures this perfectly. Think about how most people fight the aging process.
It's like a battle.
Right. They act like a stubborn, battered boxer who has been in the ring far too long, throwing exhausted, desperate punches, absolutely refusing to step out of the ring long after the referee has blown the final whistle.
It is an exhausting, undignified, and ultimately losing battle.
But what if we viewed aging as a season? Think of it like autumn. The leaves are changing color, the air is crisper, the energy is completely different than the height of summer, but it is deeply, profoundly beautiful in its own unique way, if you simply accept the season and prepare your home for it.
And cultivating that acceptance isn't just about achieving personal inner peace. It is a matter of critical societal survival.
Oh, macro level. Yeah.
If we zoom out and look the macro level, we are entering an unprecedented era of aging populations globally. If the majority of our seniors succumb to Alzheimer's because they failed to build cognitive reserve, the entire country becomes akin to a massive ship where the helmsman has completely forgotten the destination.
That's a terrifying thought. We just lose our societal direction.
Exactly.
The macro cost is staggering because a senior with a sharp, well-maintained mind is an unparalleled asset to any community. They are a literal library of experience.
Yes.
They hold decades of accumulated problem-solving skills, historical context, and emotional resilience that younger generations desperately need to tap into. A sharp senior is a national treasure.
A living library.
But when a senior loses their memory to this quiet thief, it is an absolute tragedy. It is the equivalent of a burning library. All of that irreplaceable history, all of those hard-won lessons just quietly going up in smoke.
Which is why the ultimate metaphor for the brain isn't a computer or a highway or even a gym. The brain is a garden.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means the ultimate condition of that garden rests entirely in the hands of the gardener, and that is you.
Right.
If you actively plant new thoughts and meticulously tend to the soil through voracious reading, going for that brisk daily walk to clear the weeds, providing high-quality nutrients, laughing deeply, and getting out into the world to socialize, that garden will remain lush, green, and vibrant for your entire life.
But if you abandon it, if you retire to the couch, surrender to passive television consumption, and let the acid of anger poison the soil, it quickly turns into an overgrown, chaotic forest.
And the ultimate tragedy of that overgrown forest is that eventually, even the gardener cannot find their way back home.
You must intentionally tend the garden every single day. You have to continually pave and maintain the pathways so that you can always navigate the beautiful complexity of your own mind.
Let's briefly recap your foundational toolkit for the brain gym. First, never let your brain retire. Stay ruthlessly curious and force those neurons to fire. Second, get up and walk for 30 minutes every single day to flush out the metabolic waste.
Highly crucial.
Third, step away from the crispy pork paradox and grab some omega-3 rich fish to provide premium building materials. And finally, refuse to let your brain gather dust in isolation. Go laugh, play a complex game, and vigorously debate with your friends. Aging is not the enemy we've made it out to be. Neglect is.
I will leave you with one final thought to mull over as you step out into your day. If your brain is a grand library that you are tasked with stocking with experiences for your entire life, what books, what specific new skills, what challenging, worldview-shifting conversations, or what deeply joyful memories are you actively adding to the collection today that you most want to ensure are still sitting safely on the shelves 50 years from now?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Start tending to that cognitive garden today. Keep those pathways clear, and we will catch you next time.